everyone, I keep getting asked about how I got into music photography, how I kind of get behind barricades to shoot, how I get this job. I say job because often it's volunteer. But yeah, I'm getting asked a lot about, I guess, what got me into photography, how I got to where I am, where I plan to go with it by friends, family, people at shows, that kind of thing. So I figured I should answer that since it seems to be coming up a lot. So that's what this video is for. So this is kind of my personal story, but how I got into music photography. I was kind of just thrown into it, I guess. Like, I never really thought I'd be a music photographer. I never thought that was even a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. Basically, I got a point and shoot camera as a gift. I'd wanted one for a while because I love taking pictures. So I got a point and shoot and I started bringing it to concerts because I was a huge music fan at the same time as a photo fan, I guess. So I started taking this camera to concerts and just taking pictures and getting those developed and like hanging them all over my walls and scrapbooks and just posting them everywhere because I liked them for memories. Like, I wanted pictures from every concert I went to because I wanted to have them just to like look back on and be happy and like this was a good time. That kind of thing. I never really once thought of music photography. So I've been taking photos at concerts since I was about, I'd say like 14, 15. I went to a few before that I had my camera with, but I only really started going to concerts when I was about 14. I went to Mariana's Trench concert as my first like show with just friends. And from then that's kind of when I was like, I want to go to more concerts, and I started to get into more music and started to go to more shows and took my camera. So I did that for a couple of years. That was really fun. And then I think Instagram kind of came out, and I don't know, I had like an iPod Touch or whatever, and so you can get apps on that, and I was always looking at photo apps. So I got Instagram when it kind of first came out. I don't want to sound like a hipster or anything, but I had it kind of before it blew up. So just because I was always looking at photo apps, and that's one of the ones I found. And I remember like I started following people that were actual photographers, and that was the first time I'd really paid attention or seen photography. So then I was like, oh cool, I want to take good pictures like that. So I would take my iPod or my camera and I'd go out. Like, I lived out of a small, like just outside of this small town, so it was kind of like the country. So I'd always go take pictures of like my Converse on the train tracks or like the field, or we had a barn in our yard I'd take pictures of. We were pretty cool, like artsy yard, I guess. So I was always taking pictures around my yard, trying to be like Instagram famous or something. I don't know, because I saw all these photographers and they had a lot of followers, and I was like, oh, I want to, you know, be popular on this app. And then Instagram started to really take off, and a lot of like bands I liked started getting them, and that's kind of when I guess I started following music photographers, because say Adam L. Macias was pretty big at this time still, at that time. And I know like All Time Low, or who would have, I don't know who he would be shooting back then, but he shot like every band. So there'd be bands I'd be following that he would, that they would post his photos, and that's how I found him. And then there was other photographers that were up and coming, so that's when I kind of started following music photography. But I still didn't really see myself as a music photographer. I just, like, I never really like looked up to them. I just kind of followed them because I liked seeing pictures of the bands I liked that were better than my pictures. But eventually I was like, hey, I want a DSLR camera. So I saved up my money. My parents paid for part of it because it was kind of like a gift, but it was also pretty expensive, so I ended up paying for quite a bit myself. So we kind of split that, and I got a Canon T3 with a kit lens and a 75 to 300 millimeter lens, which I actually still have that lens today because it's the only telephoto I have. And you know what? It's not that bad. Like, it's kind of a cheap lens, but it works. So I got that when I was in, I want to say when I was like 17 or 18, no, probably 17. And so I started taking pictures with that. I was like, oh, I have a better camera, I'm gonna take better pictures. And the pictures were better, but I was still shooting in auto because I had no idea what I was doing. I was not a photographer. I didn't consider myself one. I just really like taking pictures. So I had that. I was taking, like, I'd go on vacation with my family and I would yeah, take photos of everything. And I just had fun with it. And I tried taking it into a few concerts, but I couldn't because it was a professional camera. So without a photo pass, most venues did not allow it. So then I was kind of bummed. I was like, oh, why did I buy this camera? I can't even take it into concerts. And the only reason I wanted to is because I wanted better pictures at concerts, because I liked having pictures. Kind of a pattern, I guess. And then it was just under 3 years ago. It was February 3rd, 2014. It's actually not that long ago, which is weird. I was like almost 19, which isn't even that young. There's some photographers I follow that I started when they were like 16. It's weird. It's crazy. So anyways, I entered this contest to shoot a band called Down with Webster, and I actually won. So I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I got to take my camera into a concert and no one's gonna tell me I can't. So I was really excited. And so I went to that, I shot it. My photos back then were really good. Like, I thought they were really good, and you know what? They were actually not bad considering the knowledge I had on photography back then. Compared to now, they suck. But back then, that was awesome. And I was like so excited, so happy with them. And that's kind of like when I won that contest is when I really started to learn how to use my camera. It's kind of sad actually. I had my camera for like a year and a half before I really decided to like figure out how it worked. Like I started learning what ISO was and aperture and what the shutter speed did and all that kind of stuff, because I knew at a concert it was going to be dark and it's like I need to know how to shoot this well. So I started Googling stuff, and that's kind of how I learned photography. So no, I did not ever take any photography course. For those who are curious, I'm not in school for photography, which is what everyone seems to think. I just kind of did trial and error. So basically I would take my camera to a show, I would shoot, come back, oh, the images are too grainy, I'm gonna turn down the ISO. Come back, oh, they're blurry, I need to turn up my shutter speed, like have a higher shutter speed. So it's kind of how I learned. I just kind of went, tried it, didn't like it, I tried something else. And that's kind of how I figured out how I like to shoot. At first I was editing in Photoshop Elements, which is kind of garbage, but that's what I thought photographers use. And then I realized they use Lightroom. I got that for Christmas, that of 2014 I think is when I got Lightroom. Or 2015, I don't really remember. I think it was 2014. So yeah, I got Lightroom. I started learning how to use that on my own. I didn't even Google things with Lightroom. I think I just played around with it. And eventually I was like, I kind of watched like other photographers and how they edited, and that taught me some tricks in Lightroom, and that's kind of how I got to learn that. But I find Lightroom's pretty user-friendly. It's pretty self-explanatory, like everything, like exposure changes the exposure, contrast changes the contrast. Like there's some definitely like little tricks here and there that you can learn, especially to make the workflow easier, but it's pretty self-explanatory. So I kind of just learned that on my own as I went. And anyways, where was I? In my story. So yeah, I shot Down with Webster. Those went up on the site that I won through, and they were like really like, oh my gosh, these are amazing. And I was like, cool, like I'm good at this. So from there, I started looking at venues that didn't have camera policies. I still didn't consider myself a music photographer. I was just like, I just want to be able to take my camera to shows. So I started, and I think someone in Down with Webster had shared one of my photos, which was like super exciting for me. So I was like, oh cool, I want more bands to share my photos. So I started taking it to small shows, like in the city I lived near. I kind of knew which venues were really small and didn't have policies. I figured that out. So then I would take my camera to those shows, and that's kind of how I built up my portfolio. So yeah, I just and sometimes I'd sneak my camera in if I could. Usually I'd get told to put it away if I was caught, but that's how I got my portfolio going. And I mean, none of my photos were great. Heck no. Some of them were awful, but back then they were good. Back then, when I didn't know what I was doing, they were good. And yeah, so I mean, I'm glad they were actually sucked back then and they're better now, because otherwise I would not have improved and that'd be boring. So then I moved to Toronto up the fall of 2014, and that's kind of where all the shows happen. And that's, I guess, when I started considering music photography and considering myself as a music photographer. And it was about December when my friend's like, hey, this music blog is looking for a photographer. So I sent them an email and they accepted me, and then I started shooting shows for them. I don't know if I should say the name. They're not even run anymore, and they were good people. They're awesome. And I didn't really know how it worked back then. I was still kind of figuring it out. So they were also a concert promoter, so they put on shows themselves. So I requested the shows that they were putting on, thinking, oh, that's only, like, those are only the shows I can shoot. And then they're like, oh no, like, we can get you into these because they're ours, but you can request other shows. And I was like, what? So when I got back to school after the fall term, I went back to Toronto in January for my second term in school, and I started shooting for this company, or this music blog. It was all volunteer, still very much is. So yeah, I started shooting for them, and the show that I find really, like, did it for me, I guess, is I shot Bayside at the Opera House with Man Overboard, Senses Fail, somebody else, I don't know who, but I shot that show in March 29th, I think, 2015, which is like not even 2 years ago, which is also weird because that's not very long ago. So that's kind of an odd feeling. So I shot that, and that was the first show I shot where there was like a barricade. So I got to go in this photo pit. I had an actual like sticker photo pass thing, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I feel so like awesome. Like, I'm a photographer. That's kind of when it first hit me. That's like, hey, maybe I should be a music photographer. Well, C-Way was on that lineup. That's right. Good old C-Boys. So I shot that show, and I posted my photos everywhere that I could. And I got a lot of attention for them. Looking back, once again, I don't think they're that great. But I got a lot of attention from friends and family and just a couple random other people. Some of the C-Way guys shared them. So that was a really cool feeling for me. One photo was really good that everyone kind of freaked out over. And everyone's like amazed. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm good at this. This is my talent. I'm a photographer. So that's when I decided I was going to set up my website. I was going to make business cards. I was going to find like myself a logo. I don't know what I just did. I was going to find myself a logo, watermark thing. So I started shooting more and more shows, like a couple more shows through them. And then I went home for the summer. And then I started working with some local bands. One band in particular who was hiring me. So I got to shoot for them, and I was like, they were paying me. If they're watching this, they'll know who they are. Thank you guys. You really built up my confidence. So I got to shoot for them, and I was getting paid, and I was like so nervous because I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is actually happening. This is so cool. I'm getting paid to do something I've loved doing for so long. So I started shooting for them in the summer, and then I emailed the publication I was shooting in the spring with when I was about to go back to Toronto, and they had shut down. So I was like, oh shoot, I guess that's it for me. So I started looking at other blogs, and I applied to 3 more. I heard back from all of them, started shooting for them, and that's kind of when my photography really took off, because I got back to school, and Toronto, the concerts are insane. There's so many, and when you're shooting for like 3 different blogs, you get into a lot. So October, November, December, I started shooting just like show after show after show. I think I had 6 shows in a row at one point in October. And I had gotten a job at a music venue at this time too, just doing tickets and stuff. So I was also doing that. So I think I hit up 23 shows in October through working and shooting. So that's kind of when all of a sudden it was just like, I was technically working in the music industry. So I started shooting, got through that. So basically, I guess, long story short, is I built up my portfolio, and I started applying for music blogs, and through them I started getting photo passes for shows, and the more shows I went to, the better I got. And then the better I got, the more people were using my photos or asking me to shoot for them, and so forth. And it kind of just grew more and more. Started networking and started building my brand. There's still definitely a learning process, and I'm still doing some really, like, now that I look back at it, there's some stuff I did that I was like, why was I so weird? But anyways, so that's kind of how I got into it. I built myself a portfolio, and I started shooting, and that's how I got good, I guess, if you consider me good. I still doubt myself a lot. But yeah, I just started building my name up, and then I remember the summer I went home, 2015, is when I did like this Instagram meetup, which sounds lame, but it was kind of cool. And I met some really good friends through that. And one of them, I remember I was really self-conscious with my work, and I was like, I want to be a photographer, but I'm too scared to post my photos online because what if people don't like them or they unfollow me or like all that kind of stuff. And he just said to me, like, we're still good friends to this day, which is cool. But he just said to me, honestly, just post what you want and who cares what people think. And that just kind of stuck with me, and that's when I started to really post my work on my social medias and just not care. I don't know why him saying that made me finally realize that, but it did. So that's when I started posting all my concert photos, and I just stopped caring what my friends from school who didn't care about music thought. And I just started doing what I wanted, and that's kind of when I started to gain a following because I was pretty consistent with my shooting, and I got better and better, thankfully. And I'm still getting better, for sure. There's always stuff to learn. There's always ways to improve. There's still photographers that are so much better than I am that I wish I could be. So that's how I really got into photography, and it kind of just snowballed. Like, everyone asks, like, oh, how I did this, and it kind of just happened. I won a contest, I started shooting more, I emailed some people, and suddenly I was shooting for, like, now I shoot for like 5 blogs, and I'm always busy. So that is how that happened. A lot of it's just work hard, just connect to people, email people, be polite, make connections, and you will get there. Yeah, so now I'm working on for the future, I'm in school for audio production, not photography. So right now I'm looking at being a live sound tech and touring, mixing sound for bands, because that's really fun as well. If I can make it as a touring photographer, I would probably just do that, but that's really hard to do. I'm still going for it, for sure. I'm still working towards it. I'm still networking with bands, trying to work with bands directly rather than just publications. That's kind of my next step. And so far it's going pretty well. I'm hopefully going to be touring next year. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, that's my plan for the future. If I can get touring as a photographer / sound person, I might not be able to do both at the same time because I kind of need to be at front of house for sound, not in the photo pit, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so that's how I got into music photography. It just kind of happened. And thank you for watching this one. I hope it was not boring. I ramble a lot and I talk a lot, so hopefully that made sense. And that is my story. So that is how I got to where I am today.